How's everybody this morning? Good. It it's been another eventful week, folks. Um, I'm not going to try to overwhelm y'all like I did last Sunday with all the information. We're just going to talk about a couple things. But before we get started, Deuteronomy 4:29, the words of Moses to his people, to the Jewish people. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him, if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. That's the best advice I've got for y'all this morning. You know, um, we talk about preparing, you know, um, I'm going to use the Patriot nurse's term, um, beans, bullets, and band-aids, trying to get ready for whatever's going to come. But really, without Jesus Christ, it's all in vain. It really is. And, that's the easiest thing on the list to take care of, because you can come right up here or you can sit right there and you can take care of things.
Yesterday, while sailing in the Red Sea, the USS Carney shot down 3 missiles and 8 drones launched from Houthi rebel-controlled territory in Yemen. Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder made the following statement to reporters. This action was a demonstration of the integrated air and missile defense architecture that we've built in the Middle East, and that we are prepared to utilize whatever necessary to protect our partners and our interests in this important region. Brigadier General Ryder added that the Houthi land attack missiles were headed north, presumably towards targets in Israel, which is a Hail Mary shot, as the west coast of Yemen is more than 1,000 miles from the southernmost tip of Israel, a range that is right around the maximum capability of a land attack cruise missile. Carney used Standard Missile 2s to down the missiles and drones over the Red Sea after they were launched from western Yemen. Brigadier General Ryder claimed that the Houthi missiles posed no threat to the U.S. Navy destroyer, and that the Pentagon had no word of civilian casualties in the area once the weapons were downed. Carney is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer and was commissioned in 1996. The ship has a sophisticated radar system to search and track contacts, and uses Standard Missile 2s with a max range of 92 miles to shoot those targets down. The Houthi missiles were most likely Qud series land attack cruise missiles, which were supplied to them by Iran. The Houthis have fought for almost a decade against the Saudi-backed government in Yemen, and in the wake of Hamas's terrorist raid on October 7th, have restated their vow to enter the fight against Israel. Carney transited the Suez Canal into the Red Sea from the Mediterranean Sea on Wednesday. The warship is not part of a carrier strike group, but is one of 4 guided missile destroyers that are assigned to the Naval Station Rota, Spain, as part of the Navy's forward deployed force in Europe. Those 4 ships are all capable of ballistic missile defense and regularly patrol the region. And this isn't the first time while patrolling the Red Sea that the U.S. Navy has engaged weapons fired by the Houthis. In 2016, the USS Mason, another Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, shot down 2 Houthi missiles fired at them off the coast of Yemen using several Standard Missile 2s and a Sea Sparrow. Besides the Houthis, Yemen has also been the base of the Arabian Peninsula branch of Al-Qaeda. And on January 26, 2017, SEAL Team 6 conducted a raid on the area of Yakla using 2 B-22 Ospreys launched from the USS Makin Island. Although the raid took out 14 Al-Qaeda fighters, it also resulted in the death of an estimated 30 civilians and 1 member of SEAL Team 6, Chief William Owens. One of the 2 Ospreys crashed while attempting to take off after the raid, forcing the occupants, 3 of them badly injured, to jump into the other one to get back to the Makin Island. The crashed Osprey was later destroyed by one of the Air Combat Elements Harriers. Post-mission analysis assessed the raid was botched by inadequate intelligence. Chief Owens was posthumously awarded the Silver Star for his actions during the mission. Meanwhile, as Israel amasses its troops for a 2-front war against Hamas to the south and Hezbollah to the north, 2 ships from the Bataan Amphibious Ready Group, the Bataan and the Carter Hall, have transited the Suez Canal northbound and rejoined the ARG's 3rd ship, the Mesa Verde, as ordered by the Pentagon. The Bataan ARG is now in the vicinity of the Ford Carrier Strike Group, which, as discussed in a previous episode, consists of an aircraft carrier, a cruiser, and 3 destroyers sailing in the eastern Mediterranean. Defense Secretary Austin has also ordered the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group to the region, but that complement of ships, again as previously discussed, a carrier, a cruiser, and 2 destroyers, are not on station yet, and it's unclear when they'll arrive. The American naval forces in the region are there to prevent the war from spreading, particularly to keep Iran, which is the common denominator in providing military aid to these regional Islamic extremist groups, out of the fight. The naval forces are also there to conduct a possible non-combatant evacuation operation, also known as a NEO, using Marine Corps recon and or Navy SEALs if intelligence is good enough to attempt one. Additionally, during a speech to the nation last night framing the current global situation as a fight between democracies and dictatorships, President Biden requested a $100 billion package for foreign aid, a large percentage of which would be earmarked for Ukraine and Israel.
That's kind of the political rundown of things. And of course, I think probably everybody was aware that, a U.S. ship, we had one U.S. service member killed this week in Iraq. There were several drone attacks on military bases in Syria and Iraq during the week. Of course, things continue to heat up in Israel, but make no mistakes about this, people. This is not a geopolitical war. This is a spiritual war. It really is. If you, when you start looking into it and the way people are acting, it's a spiritual affair. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces. Through all nations of the earth are gathered against it. Of course, now that's a reference I have always believed to the Battle of Armageddon, the battle that that'll take place at the very end of the 7 years of trials and tribulations. But we have started seeing a shadowing of things, and we've talked about this on and off for a year. The rise of a one world government that's predicted in the book of Revelations, the rise of a one world economic system talked about in the book of Revelations, a one world religious order that's talked about in the book of Revelations and other places in the Bible also. But did you all keep up with all the diplomats, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors that visited Israel this past week? Bunches. We'll have a little list here in a minute. But, I think that it's very possible that this is going to be the state of things from here on out, that Jerusalem. Why would you think that Jerusalem would be such a big deal? Besides, why all the hubbub? Why all the fuss? Really?
Because it's the city of God.
Right. That's where God wrote his name. Where's Jesus coming back to? The Mount of Olives. He's not coming back to Philadelphia. He's not coming back to Washington or Berlin or Moscow. It's hard to put into words sometimes, folks. Joseph, go to our next slide, please. This is some of the diplomats that came to Israel this past week. The picture on the right-hand side is the German chancellor and his entourage laying on the tarmac at the airport in Tel Aviv because of air raid sirens going off, missile attack. Probably not one of his best photo moments, but the events promoted several world leaders to announce their intentions to visit Israel, including U.S. President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and British Prime Minister, I'm not sure how you say his first name, Sunak. Numerous countries call for a ceasefire and a de-escalation. Of course, we know Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Union. She was there this week also, and several others. So, it seems like to me that that we're kind of seeing a shadowing of that prophecy coming into play now, that Jerusalem will be a stumbling block to all peoples that go against it or stand against it. Joel 3 and 2, and this is from the New Living Translation. I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will judge them for harming my people, my special possession, for scattering my people among the nations, and for dividing up my land. Of course, this is in reference again to the Battle of Armageddon, because the battle, if you really study it all out, I don't believe the battle is actually going to be in the valley of Armageddon, or the Mount Megiddo. That's what Armageddon actually means. It's a gathering. It's where the armies will gather, and then they will march on Jerusalem to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and that's when Jesus comes back to the Mount of Olives and does away with them. But it's interesting that divide up my land. You know, we've talked about it in our Sunday school class, and as we've gone through this and talked about the Ezekiel war and different things, God always refers to that little bitty slip of land. That's my land. Talking about Israel. That's my land. And dividing up my land. Do you all know that in 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Israel took the area of what is now Gaza? We got some maps coming up. Go ahead and go to this next slide. This is the 1947 plan. This is how Israel was set up in 1948 when it was born. The partition plan. The blue is what was given to the Jews, and the green is what was given to the Arabs or the Palestinians. This is the way it was all set up. And of course, we know that Israel declared their independence May 14th, 1948. May 15th, 1948, they were attacked by 5 Arab countries. And they were just a ragtag, they didn't have an army. They had just come out of the Holocaust. They didn't have an army. They didn't have an air force. They didn't have a navy. But by God's hand on them, they defeated 5 Arab armies. And I believe, actually, I've got that on there twice. Go ahead and go to the next one, Joseph. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, this 1947, this is what was laid out after their war of independence. Actually, that's not a good term for it, because they were a nation and they were attacked and they tried to drive them into the sea. But can you see the difference? This is what they possessed after the 48 war. And still Gaza, that little bitty green strip right over there on the Mediterranean, still remained in Palestinian control. But a lot of the other areas shrunk. You can see up in the north, in and around Jerusalem and whatnot. And of course, then the 67 war changed the lines a little bit more. And then we're going to fast forward to 1973. Next slide, Joseph, please. I've got my maps all messed up. Anyway, in 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Israel took the Gaza Strip, and they took most of the Sinai Peninsula also. They almost lost that war. They were attacked. It was very similar to what has happened this time. They were attacked. It was a complete and total surprise by the Arab armies. Golda Meir appealed to Richard Nixon, which he was not really a big lover of the Jewish state, but his mother had always told him, if you ever get a chance to help Israel, do it. And he remembered what his mother had told him. And so he did that. And of course, all our military arms that we sent to him, we didn't send troops, but we sent munitions and whatnot, tanks and planes and whatnot, because within the first couple of days of the 1973 war, Israel had lost 50% of their aircraft and almost that many tanks also. And they thought that they were going to lose. And had it not been for Richard Nixon sending all that aid over there, of course, we know God had his hand in it. So we're not going to give Richard too much credit for it. But anyway, they took the Gaza, little section of Gaza. It was controlled by Israel, and it was controlled by Israel from 1973 up until 2005. In 2005, President George W. Bush convinced Israel Prime Minister Ariel Sharon to remove all 9,000 Jews from Gaza, turning it over entirely to the Muslims, Palestinians. He did so on August 23rd, 2005. And ever since, it has been in the control of the Palestinians. This was supposed to bring peace, folks. It was done. There'll be peace. There'll be peace. If we do this, if Israel, if you'll give up this little bitty spot of land, there'll be peace. And they gave it up, but there wasn't peace. And of course, I want to remind you back what God said about dividing up my land. On August 23rd, 2005, Hurricane Katrina originated over the Bahamas, making landfall as a Category 3 hurricane on August 29th in southern Louisiana, New Orleans, lasting until August 31st, 2005. Kind of interesting that happened right at the same exact time. Hurricane Katrina was a devastating Category 5 Atlantic hurricane that caused 1,836 fatalities and damage, estimated between $97.4 billion to $145.5 billion in late August 2005, particularly in the city of New Orleans and surrounding areas. Do you think God's, I've been saying this for a while, you think God's trying to get our attention? You think he's been thumping us on the head and we've just been ignoring it? Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord has said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Y'all think God still adheres to that? That promise, that covenant that he made with Abraham? I do. Brother Guy was talking about replacement theology and the dangers of it. And it is. It's very dangerous to think that God has stopped honoring his promises. Because if he stopped honoring his chosen people and the promises that he made to them, why should we think he would keep his promise to us? Interesting, if you look back over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, every time a president, since Israel has been born, since 1948, they've been around 70 some years now, if you look back, every time that somebody went to divide up their land, they offered some kind of great, amazing peace plan, that was going to bring peace to Israel and peace to the Middle East, peace to the Middle East. You used to hear that all the time. Carter administration, everybody was talking about it. But every time the land was divided up, something happened. And I didn't put them all down here, just kind of a few. On March 22nd, 1979, U.S. President Jimmy Carter did not side with Israel and vetoed the UN Resolution 446, claiming Israel illegally occupied territory since 1967. Soon after, on 3/26/1979, the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty was signed in Washington, when Israel gave up land. Then on 3/28/1979, the worst nuclear power plant disaster in U.S. history hit 3 Mile Island nuclear meltdown. And you can actually go back every time. Hurricanes, massive tornadoes. It's amazing, and we're seeing the Bible come alive in front of us. These prophecies and stuff, and it's just amazing. People use the term shock and awe. Remember that from the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, that war, that was the big term, shock and awe. I stay in shock and awe because it's just, I've read this and I've studied this stuff, and we look out and we see it happening. We see it happening. On October 30th, 1991, President H.W. Bush opened the Madrid Peace Conference, which brought Israelis and Palestinians together to negotiate for the very first time. Bush told Israel that the territorial compromise is essential for peace. Territorial, dividing up my land. The next day, on October 31st, 1991, at President Bush's home in Kennebunkport, Maine, Hurricane Bob, North Atlantic storm, struck with waves as high as his 3-story house. Kind of interesting, isn't it? You know, you don't really think, we kind of think that, you know, God's not really all that interested in what's going on down here, and he really doesn't interfere in things. But you know, you can every day in the news you can see God's fingerprints on things as puzzle pieces are being moved around.
Biden, Biden, you can't hide. Biden, Biden, you can't hide.
You can stop that, Joseph.
We can't do it.
That is a pro-Hamas rally. They're taking place all over with greater and greater frequency in favor of Hamas and to do away with Israel, that Israel should be stopped, they shouldn't be allowed to go into Gaza, etc. so on. That's in Los Angeles, folks. That's in Los Angeles. Slide the next one, Joseph. Oh, that one's in Los Angeles. The other one was in Washington. I got them backwards. Go ahead. But we're seeing these protests break out all over the world. You know, we studied the Ezekiel conflict, and of course, this is not the Ezekiel war, not yet anyway. But one of the things that we all had found interesting, or I personally had found interesting about the Ezekiel conflict, this future conflict where this coalition of nations will come against Israel, Russia, Turkey, Iran, Libya, and Sudan, and some others. But they'll form a coalition and attack Israel from the north. And God will defeat them for Israel on the mountains of Israel. But it says in that passage that Israel will stand alone, that no one will come to their aid. And there'll be some countries that stand up and ask the attacking countries, why are you doing this? But nobody's going to rush to Israel's aid. And you can actually see this happening, the world opinion changing from 2 weeks ago, October 7th, when this all started. Everybody was just shocked at what the Hamas had done to the Israeli people or the Jewish people. And now you're seeing the complete reversal of that. Now it's the Jews are the bad guys. And of course, the Bible predicts all this stuff, folks. You know, the Antichrist will declare war on the Jewish people during the 7 years. And of course, not only on the Jewish people he actually won't declare war on until the 3.5 year mark, when he declares himself to be God in the temple. But, you know, it's talked about that he will be given the power to make war against the saints and overcome them, so you know, Christians and whatnot. But you're seeing this sentiment grow in the world. And I believe that's part of the spirit of the Antichrist. You know, that spirit that is already here. Paul tells us that it's already here. John told us that it was already here. It's always been here, but it's growing in intensity and fervor. I've tried to talk to one person at every service stop I've made in the last 2 weeks about what's going on. I thought it would be a great way to, you know, kind of bring Jesus up, you know, and whatnot. And we've had some good discussions, but, you know, I've talked to about 20 people, and out of the 20 people that I've talked to, only 2 had a clue. Honestly, and I'm not trying to be mean, you know, but people just don't understand what's going on. They just don't get it. It amazes me. The money that our president's asking for, the $100 billion to send to the Ukraine and Israel, it's interesting how that money is divided up. According to what I've read, and what's been proposed, the Ukraine will get 90 billion and Israel will get 10. That's interesting. And, I've actually listened to several senators talking about it, and he thinks that a lot of them think that the only reason that Israel's included in it is because they don't think the Senate will pass it unless Israel's tacked onto it. They're going to tack Israel onto it. We're going to give them a little money, but we really want to give it all to the Ukraine. The carrier task group, the Ford, is already on station off the coast of Israel, along with an amphibious assault group. And of course, the Eisenhower is en route to there, and it's supposed to pass through the Straits of Gibraltar the first of the week. They also sent the USS NSG, the submarine, the Boomer, the ballistic missile submarine. It left Scapa Flow, Scotland, earlier this week en route to the Mediterranean. And it's kind of a unique boat. Not only does it carry, ballistic missiles, with nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles, but it also has two compartments, missile tubes that have been converted for SEALs to be launched from. Navy SEALs, like for rescue missions and whatnot, clandestine missions. So, maybe they're thinking some type of rescue of maybe some of these hostages or something. Maybe it would be possible. But things are escalating quickly. China has deployed 6 warships to the Med. They're right around the area of Kuwait, and they're fixed to go around and go through the Suez Canal and come in. The Russians have been rattling their sabers too. They've launched another offensive in the Ukraine, and they also announced that all their aircraft flying in the Black Sea region are going to be equipped with hypersonic missiles, which could strike the carrier task group in the Mediterranean. So things are really progressing quickly. I would urge people to, first and foremost, if I had a long talk with Ethan and his girlfriend yesterday about all this. Start talking to your people. Try to get them up to speed. They need to be saved. You need to be saved. If you don't have that relationship with Jesus Christ, because, we don't know what's going to happen. War could break out here. I saw a report from the Department of Homeland Security as of a couple days ago, from the first of the year, January 1st to now, almost 3 million, just a few 10,000, 20 or 30,000 shy of 3 million illegal immigrants came across the border this year. Just shy of 3 million. And they're not being vetted. They're not being, are they terrorists? Are they not terrorists? Most of them, amazingly enough, are not women and children. They're military age males coming across the border. Last year, record number. Year before that, record number. I've seen estimates as high as 15 million have come across in the last 3 years. I tend to be more conservative and say probably somewhere closer to 10, but we don't know, So, could we wake up one morning and have the same thing happen here that Israel experienced with Hamas? Possible, or something else. But be ready. Be ready to meet the Lord. In Revelations chapter 1, it says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, things which must shortly take place. And we talked about this back, 6 or 7 months ago when we were in the book of Revelations in chapter 1. And, that means that John was not trying to say that things were going to happen shortly 2,000 years ago. It means in rapid succession. When these things start, and we can see all the dominoes set. It's like a row of dominoes, and we're just waiting for that first one to tip over. So, be ready. Know the Lord. Get right with the Lord. Get your relationship in good standing with him, no matter what. And then start thinking about what you need to do to prepare. You have a little food put back, and, and whatnot. Just, we've talked about preparing and whatnot, canning classes and different things. But again, the first and foremost thing, is be ready to meet the Lord. Without that, it doesn't mean anything, folks.